gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for January 26, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, the Xbox Developer Direct provided some release dates and some surprises, and that means it's time to start looking to E3. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Jan Ochoa, everybody. Jan, how are you doing?
We were talking about sandwiches in the pre-show, but now my feelings hurt because I'm thinking about E3, and I just keep hearing E3 every other day, and I get
you didn't need to eat to get indigestion. I could just shoot it right into your veins at any time I want with the mere mention of E3. I know what you mean.
Here's the thing, Jeff Grubb. Good morning to you, and good morning to the audience.
Good morning.
Right before E3 is supposed to be Keighley's Summer Game Fest again?
That's correct.
So is all of Games Media just going to be in Los Angeles for a month?
It feels like that. It does sound like Reed Pop, who's in charge of E3 now. It's no longer the ESA or whatever it was, the European Space Agency. They are probably trying to work it out so Keighley is at least a little bit closer. They're trying to be a little bit more friendly. At least that's my understanding. Who knows? Things could still easily spin out of control because these are a bunch of different companies that have a bunch of different reasons to do different things at different times. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And if one of them's like, man, if we just waited a week longer, we could maybe have a little bit more time to get our stuff ready, and then we could also stand out on our own, and then everyone does that a week later than that, a week later than that, a week later than that, and suddenly we are once again spread out into that very familiar game mess. For us, I say we focus on E3, and if Keighley's right there, we'll go to Keighley as well. But beyond that, who knows? We might have to just wrangle it all from remote locations around the country. Yeah, but how are you feeling, Jan? How are you doing this morning?
I'm feeling great right now. If you check the website, there is a quick look for the Dead Space remaster.
It just popped off right now, right? We just put it up right this second.
And I am here to say, and Grubb, I think you've also been playing it. You've had some issues.
Yeah, I couldn't really play it because I was having issues. I explained it to Mike and some of my Discord mods the other day, and they were like, this is your fault. This is not the game's fault. I think it's the game's fault. I can't get the control right. None of the controls are working with keyboard and mouse.
Weird.
And then some of the controls, I can go forward. I just can't sprint or do anything else. And like aiming works about 1 out of every 5 times. And then the gamepad controller doesn't work at all. Like none of the inputs work. So I'm gonna see if I can update, if a patch fixes that, and if not, then I'll go say, hey, EA, please help me. I'm very stupid. But I'll say this. It looks really nice. It looks really good.
I've been playing it. It's really good. Turns out Dead Space was a great game. Dead Space is still a great game.
Yes, turns out. Because that just happened, I don't have the review scores, but I might. There's a lot of news today. If we get through it, maybe we'll talk about those review scores a little bit. We'll see how it did.
Take a peeksies.
Yeah, we will take a peeksies. All right, let's get into this show. Before we do, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you were watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with that Xbox Developer Direct Showcase. We got a lot of headlines from this. Let's just go through them. Tango Gameworks announces HiFi Rush, which launches yesterday, actually. This comes from Rachel Kaiser at GamesBeat. Xbox surprised gamers at its Developer Direct with a new title from Tango Gameworks called HiFi Rush. It's a rhythm action game where the hack and slash gameplay syncs with the music for a living soundtrack. The developers also announced it launches today on PC, Xbox, and Game Pass. HiFi Rush has a cartoonish art style reminiscent of games like Jet Set Radio. It stars Chai, a future rock star, quote unquote, and a cast of companions as they attempt to take on a more major corporation. Chai must fight through its departments, each of which is themed after a musical genre, and finishes each section with a boss battle. let's talk about this one real quick. This looked amazing.
Yeah.
Shadow dropping kind of out of nowhere.
Love it.
Was a bit surprising, but I also love it. It is a $30 game, but of course it's on Game Pass as well. And I think like a $30 game is like the right level of like, yeah, you could shadow drop it like this and pull this off. I started playing it. It seems like a lot of people are playing it. Boy, it is a lot of fun, and it just looks amazing.
Whew. I was waiting to hear the smoke on the streets from the crew here on whether or not I should check this out, and it seems like I have to. And then I'm getting overwhelmed with video games again, Jeff. Yeah,
there's suddenly too many video games all like just out of nowhere. We got through January mostly unscathed, and now here we are in the last week, and it's just going to beat us over the head with video games. I'll say that this was a very pleasant surprise. It might benefit from the shadow drop, where it's like expectations have been built up over the course of a year, and it could be a smaller game, and it's okay if it's a smaller game, and then it's like, wait, it's actually, I guess it's a $30 game, but it feels much bigger than that, and it feels robust, and the animation, the visuals are so good, the acting and the performances are so good, and then that soundtrack is incredible. You go, a lot of people are pointing out that Nine Inch Nails song that's in the first boss fight, but even like the Black Keys song that plays as you're going through the tutorial.
Oh no!
I'm just like, man, am I going to go get into the Black Keys in a major way again? I'm like, yeah, I think I am.
Oh, no.
It's real good.
I love the Black Keys. All right, I'm sold. I'm sold. Damn it.
So, people have been mostly playing through it. It seems like a pretty substantial game for $30 again. And it works like this. Here's like the crux of the combat, Jan, and then we'll move on from this.
Sure.
All of your attacks happen on the beat, whether you press the button on the beat or not. But if you press the button on the beat, you'll do more damage, and then you could combo things together a little bit more. And then your light attack is a quarter note, so you could do 4 per like stanza or whatever it is. And then your heavy attack it goes on every other beat. So you have to hit it, and then you wait a beat, and then you hit it again as the attack is going, and then you could combine that into the next big attack, and it just feels so good. And then they start mixing it up a little bit, where it's like, okay, do a heavy attack, and then when that's going to land, instead do a quarter note attack and do that back to back, and then that'll go into a whole other combo. And it sounds, I think it's like, okay, yeah, that's the way a lot of games might work, but because you're syncing it up with the songs, it just feels so cool, and they really pulled it off, and it looks fantastic doing it, because again, the visuals are stunning. I mean, I think it's one of the best looking games ever already.
It immediately reminded me, and it doesn't look like it, but it immediately reminded me of Sunset Overdrive.
Yeah, it definitely has that, but it's like it is the next gen upgrade of that in terms of the visuals. And now it's not open world. You're going down the levels and stuff like that. So it's like it has a little. It can have more details, and it is more detailed for sure.
I'm completely fine with that.
Yes, absolutely,
so completely fine with that.
Kyle Degradable says it's DMC, it's Devil May Cry on the beat, and it's like, yes, that's what it is. It's Devil May Cry combat set to music, and the music makes the combat even more effective. So. Very cool stuff. Let's move along with these headlines, then we'll talk about the overall show. Minecraft Legends releases on April 18th. This comes from Mike Minotti at GamesBeat. Microsoft announced today during its Developer Direct showcase that Minecraft Legends is releasing on April 18th. Minecraft Legends gives the popular block-based game a more strategic spin. It will release for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Legends will be available also as part of the Game Pass service. Minecraft has had spin-offs before, including the Diablo-like Minecraft Dungeons. The original has become one of the most popular games in the world. And now here we are with Legends, which is, it's a real-time strategy game, right? And I thought it looked pretty good in that showcase. What do you think?
I'm still confused about who this is specifically for, but I understand that the Minecraft audience is incredibly expansive.
Right, so there's probably like a small segment that would be like very much into this, right? But it's like
100%.
It is. I also find it difficult to imagine that crowd in my head.
Yeah, I popped open Twitch yesterday, and I saw one of the top games, still Minecraft. Turns out, still huge,
always and forever.
So,
yep.
I know that Minecraft Dungeons didn't exactly have the lifespan that Microsoft wanted. I found it to be fun, if not a little bit limited. Hopefully, Minecraft Legends is a little bit more feature rich to ensnare folks to hang on for a bit longer than it did. I feel like I've been hearing about this game for a while.
Yeah, I think when I first started here is like when we first got it rumored. So yeah, I think that's That is, yeah. I mean, it's cool that, okay, well, April 18th, we won't have to be waiting too much longer. It has its release date. And that's going to be mostly a theme throughout this, is these things getting release dates. The Elder Scrolls Online Necrom goes all in on Cosmic Horror for its 2023 chapter. This comes from Cameron Koch at GameSpot. The Elder Scrolls Online Necrom is the next chapter of ZeniMax Online's MMORPG and will introduce a new class, reimagined locations that are bound to be exciting for Elder Scrolls lore heads, multiple ancient mysteries to unravel, and tentacles. Lots and lots of tentacles. Well, now count me in, of course. You gotta see my search history. You'll know I'm in there for that.
There we go.
As revealed in the recent Xbox and Bethesda developer direct, Necrom will arrive June 5th, 2023 on PC and Mac, and for those on console, it'll arrive on June 20th. It will bring players back to Morrowind, specifically the eastern coastal region known as the Telvanni Peninsula, that is home to the ancient Dark Elf city from which the chapter draws its name. Since Necrom was last seen in 1994's The Elder Scrolls Arena, the first game in the series, the new expansion gives ZeniMax Online an opportunity to update and expand upon the City of the Dead for modern audiences. People here's the thing I'll remember about Elder Scrolls Online until the day I die. Being at that one E3 showcase from Bethesda and as being like, Elder Scrolls Online, no one cares about that. And then just having a woman screaming her head off from excitement about Elder Scrolls Online, being more excited for this than she's ever been excited for anything else in her entire life. I'm like, man, that left an imprint on me. People really like Elder Scrolls. Yeah. And people also really like Morrowind. So going back there has got to be exciting, I think, for a lot of these fans. For me, though, personally, this just makes me want to go back and play Elder Scrolls Morrowind. I think I might just go play that instead. But shout out to the homies who are in this MMO. Any interest in an Elder Scrolls MMO RPG, and like this content get you excited for it?
Not entirely, not at all. But I am so glad that there are folks out there that are enjoying a thriving MMO. Other than Final Fantasy 14, I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but hey, good. I constantly forget Elder Scrolls Online is still going.
Yeah,
so.
And apparently it's very popular still. So it's not Final Fantasy 14. It's not World of Warcraft, but it's not like some basement tier of MMOs. Yeah. It is thriving, as you said.
Yeah.
Forza Motorsport's new deep dive promises the most technically advanced racing game ever. This comes from Jordan Midler at VGC. Forza Motorsport will be the most technically advanced racing game ever, according to developer Turn 10 Studios. The next entry in the racing series was shown off in a deep dive video shared during the Xbox and Bethesda developer direct to showcase on Wednesday. The new entry will mark the first mainline Forza Motorsport game on the current generation of consoles, following Forza Horizon 5 in 2021. Forza Motorsport will feature over 500 real-world cars at launch, and according to its developer, they're also planning to have over 800 unique upgrades and custom modifications. Forza Motorsport will launch with 20 environments featuring multiple track layouts. In addition to fan favorites, 5 all-new to Motorsport locations will be featured in the game, including the first in South Africa, Kyalami. Courses will depict 10 times more realistic detail, including highly detailed vegetation and overgrowth, according to Turn 10, with all the cutting-edge visuals, including tens of thousands of fully animated 3D spectators. Each player will feel immersed in the spectacle of racing. Now, that is the thing I noticed when looking at this video, Jan, is when they cut to the crowd, the audience did look way more realistic than they've ever looked in a Forza game before, and that was pretty surprising. I'm like, oh yeah, they are really going all out with this one to make it feel more immersive. Now, I don't know how much I ever really needed that, but they can do it now, so they're doing it. The more notable thing with this game, though, is that this is the one that didn't get a release date. Instead, they said it's coming in 2023. Now, I think we previously heard that it was supposed to come in the first half of this year. Now they're saying 2023. Do you think is that like a stealth delay or what's happening here?
I think they're covering their bases here in that they don't want to have to announce a delay. I have a feeling that they have a release window that they're trying to target, but these people that they gotta now animate and model all these people, they're gonna take time. So
do you think we can get into the game? Do you think we could go talk to them and say, hey, animate us and put us in the game?
Phil, I know that you're not personally doing any of the animations.
As far as we know.
But get some people. Like, you could spare 6 people, 8 people. Just do it. Just throw us in. At least Grubb and I. Yeah, and then put everyone else on a t-shirt.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we'll wear a t-shirt of Tam. and then you can put us 2 in the game. People mentioned that Keeley later in the day was like, the game's coming out before June, and I think people are assuming that he has heard more and is kind of confirming that. To me, that feels like that's what was said last year. So, and they didn't say this is a delay, so he's basically reiterating what we heard before. Maybe he did hear, though. Maybe he does know more, and that's always possible. I guess if I were like to bet right now, I'd say it probably still does come in the first half of the year, but we'll see. You think you're right. They covered their bases at the very least.
Yeah. It could either be an E3 summer release or easily hit in the fall, and they'd be fine.
This is the kind of game that they filled in some of the release dates: April, May, June for the Elder Scrolls Online expansion. But you could put a racing game up next to the expansion for the Elder Scrolls Online, and those things can coexist, right? They're not going to step 100%. On each other's toes in any major way. All right, the final game update from this show: Redfall debuts on May 2nd on Xbox Series X and S and PC. This comes from Dean Takahashi at GamesBeat. At long last, Microsoft and Bethesda revealed at the Xbox Developer Direct event that Redfall is coming on May 2nd. Redfall is a 4-player co-op or single-player game coming from Bethesda's Arcane Austin studio, and the title is much bigger than we thought it was, with an island that is much more like an open world. Microsoft showed off the latest about the game in its Xbox showcase today, and it looks pretty spectacular with a unique spin on vampire and heavy weapons soldier combat. I watched this today because yesterday we were recording Demo Derby, so I kind of missed out on it at the time. And I think it looks very good, and I could see where they're saying it's like a Far Cry game, because it is like this open world island map that you are going to do missions on. You can clear out these enemy areas that they are protecting, and that you could treat it. You could approach those situations however you want, like an Arcane game. And then I also still see some Left 4 Dead in these things called vampire nests, which are these procedurally generated things that you go into and take it on with your buddies or by yourself. And it's like, well, yeah, that does still sound like Left 4 Dead. So it's like kind of actually has both things in there. But it does feel like the core of the game is that open world exploration, finding colored loot like that's been in every Far Cry game. Did you watch this, and how are you feeling about Redfall now after this latest gameplay reveal?
I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful. I like that they lead at the top with you can play solo or with a squad. I'm curious to see how they'll handle progression that way. I will say the guns look ugly as sin.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on there. Yeah,
and not that the models are bad or whatever, but like the style. There's one gun I saw in the trailer with a bunch of runes and bones, and that looks pretty sick. There was also like one of the classes, because they showed some of the skill trees that you can explore in the gameplay deep dive. And someone pulls out like a spectral sniper rifle, which is pretty neat. I think I'm excited about that. My one problem, I'm just tired of dark games.
Yeah, it's not a blue skies and gaming situation, is it? It's dark, and then there's enemies that can make it even darker. They're like, this is like a shroud demon, and it'll shroud you in complete darkness. Oh no, that's scary. I think there's still something maybe a little bit off with the tone of the game, and that's always something that I think is it's very noticeable and maybe abrasive in trailers, and then once you're in the context of actually playing it, that stuff often evaporates, and you're like, oh, it makes sense now that I'm playing it and it feels right. But from looking at it right now, I'm like, the tone of the design, the tone of that the characters are bringing, some of that stuff still feels a little off. But when they mostly focused on what you're going to be doing in the game, I think this is something I can get into. It's just going to come down to how creative I can get in this open world, and it's an arcade game, so my expectations are very, very creative, and I think I'm ready to sort of. And then at the same time, it's still an action game, so it's not like a lot of other immersive sims where it's like, okay, here's a situation where you need to figure out how to get out of this room. And I remember I was playing. It wasn't an arcane one, but I was at PAX, and I was playing an immersive sim, and like the developers are kind of watching over my shoulder because I'm a games journalist, and there's like obviously like very cool and creative ways to get out of this room. But I was just like, I'm going to pick up 4 boxes and I'm going to jump on the boxes, and they're kind of teetering, and I'm going to jump out of this room. And they're like, oh, no one's ever tried that before. And they had in their voice like, oh, you're a dumb person, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I don't. These games can often make me feel pretty stupid. But when it's an action game, I'm like in combat, I feel like I can be a little bit more creative and pull some stuff off. And this game is leaning in that direction. So I'm pretty hopeful that I'm going to click with this. But I'll tell you what. I'm glad that HiFi Rush just came out because that's what I'm waiting for with every game. I just want to play it before I really have to pass any sort of judgment on it. And that's why I feel like, so when we talk about these games for a long time before they're out, it's almost like, it feels like a waste of time a lot of times. I just need to play this game to know if I'm going to like it, right?
Yeah, I feel like we get a little too bogged down in like I don't even think it's a hype cycle at this point. It's just like, all right, we're going to tell you about this game well ahead of time before it's even ready. Let's get ready to discourse. And then I feel like, this is also has happened with Forspoken, where I feel like because of that very poorly received trailer that came out months and months ago, people had already decided their opinions on the game.
Yeah.
And then, reviews hit and everything. Here's a weird thing, Jeff. I think I'm turning around on Forspoken.
I bet that game gets just fine when you're exploring the world. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah, that's why what I enjoyed about the demo so much.
Yes.
So I feel like Redfall might occupy a similar space where it's not quite Destiny for some folks, where they'll devote all their time, but a game that I feel like we are blind to that still has a giant audience is the Borderlands games.
Yeah, and there's definitely some Borderlands in this game, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
some
really
freaks out there.
Yes, definitely. And I think that this game could be something that like hits along those same lines. I mean, that's easy to say, difficult to pull off, but I think there's a chance that this is what they're going for. And you say things like Borderlands and Far Cry matched up with what Arcane can do in terms of immersive sim elements. That's very promising. But there's also a lot of things that can go wrong with getting those things to click together, which I think is evident in that they've had to delay this game multiple times to get it right. And so, but here we are. They're showing it off. Seems like they're pretty confident now, and I am ready to get my hands on it once and for all, and just like see how I feel once I'm actually playing it, because that's really where I need to be with these games. All right, there's a little bit more to talk about in terms of like what Xbox is doing for this year, but in the meantime, like overall, this showcase, how did you feel about it? I was once I started seeing HiFi Rush and seeing like the Redfall gameplay thing, I'm like, I guess we could have talked over this, but still, it was like, okay, 4 or 5 games over the course of 40 minutes, still pretty slow paced. But I don't know. I came out of it feeling pretty good when I did kind of finally catch up on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. Unfortunately, the showcases that work best for when we talk over are like very trailer heavy,
yes, the quick ones,
very like snappy, very quick ones. Yeah, that like they dived into these games and like explained like, yo, this is what's happening, this is going to come out. So I feel like it may not have worked the best.
Yes, it was a borderline one where it's like this one probably was on the other side of it. We're just going to be quiet listening to them talk a lot, which is that's fine. And there were some surprises with HiFi Rush, but they were few and far between.
Yeah, and also like Microsoft just doesn't do enough of these.
Yes.
That not that they don't know what they're doing, they're a major gaming company, but like I feel like the pacing was odd. And mostly just like, okay, like why do this to begin with? But I guess you feel like you need to explain what's even coming out to get people excited to get an Xbox or to continue being a member of Game Pass.
Yes. And I do think that kind of setting expectations very low really, again, worked in the favor of HiFi Rush. A lot of excitement coming out for that immediately, and then it turns out being a good game also really helps, and people have been kind of talking about it nonstop. It's already very, very popular on Steam, getting a lot of really high, good ratings on there, so it's promising for that game.
Yeah.
All right, not to close out this topic, let's just hit this last element here that they talked about in a blog post. Xbox to host a summer showcase in Los Angeles later this year. This comes from James Batchelor at GI Biz. Microsoft has confirmed it will hold a physical showcase of its upcoming games in Los Angeles this summer. The news was revealed at the end of a blog post summing up the announcement from last night's Xbox Developer Direct. While it gives no details or specific dates, the reference to the return of our yearly showcase suggests it's highly likely to be held in June around the same time as E3. While both of its main rivals, Nintendo and Sony, have opted not to host physical presentations at E3 for several years, Xbox has always been a stable part of the annual trade show. If this year's showcase is not part of E3, it's likely to instead be aligned with Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, which he announced will have a physical presence in 2023. It's also possible Microsoft will opt to host its own event separate of either large festival. E3 2023, this is the final part here, will be organized by ReedPop, parent of GamesIndustry.biz, and our team is preparing its own presence at the show as well. I left that in here because I think that there's probably like ongoing conversations between ReedPop and Microsoft. At least it's kind of that vibe I'm getting from the stuff I'm hearing. So Microsoft could still show up as part of E3. It's just like it's different than when it was, the traditional team. So they probably are like looking to figure stuff out. They probably need new contracts and whole new conversations about what that looks like and who gets what and who pays for what, those sorts of things. I'll also point out Nintendo, while they didn't have a stage show, they were at every physical E3 with the booth. They did have stuff. Now, I think in the last year, it was mostly for meetings and for behind closed door stuff, I think. No, they had they did their Nintendo streams from the show floor instead of having their big booth. That's what they did like the last time. But they still were there, and you can go have conversations with them. So I think Nintendo is also kind of on the border, but likely to return. Beyond that, though, I think, do you think like Sony shows up, and do you think Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft also show up for E3?
I feel like Nintendo and Microsoft may be a soft lock for E3.
Yeah. Sony
less so. Based off of their weird not playing ball with E3 in the last couple of years. I don't know if that means that they'll devote like a huge presence to Summer Game Fest, or if they're just going to try and skip both events and just do their own independent stuff.
Yeah.
But I do see the value of popping up at one, if not both of these. So maybe Sony would reconsider their strategy. But also, I feel like if it's just Nintendo at E3, like, is that a show that will attract a huge audience to go in and like trying to peruse? I don't know.
Yeah, I think for ReedPop, in terms of like attracting people to E3, they need to think of something beyond just being able to like what partners they're going to get. They need to put on sort of a community show in a whole other way. And so they better be thinking outside the box immediately and not relying on, I hope these big companies bring big games so people just want to come. You can't, something you can't control. So if you're ReedPop and trying to make money off of this thing, you need to be thinking beyond that. I'll say when I've been looking into this a little bit, Sony was always supposed to do that big showcase last year, like its PlayStation showcase, and it didn't do one. It did a State of Play instead.
State of Play.
Yes, and it seems like it did that just because most of its developers weren't quite ready to show their things. Again, that's at least based on what I'm hearing, is that they have a lot of stuff they want to talk about. But in the time frame that they were given for last year, they weren't going to be able to get enough ready to like really wow people, and Sony didn't think they had enough stuff to do a showcase, so they pulled back. And that's the time when we were hearing, maybe they're not doing it because they don't want to have a showcase and look like they have a ton of games when they're in this argument with Microsoft about Activision. Seems like that's probably wasn't the reasoning it was happening. It was more, it's hard to ask developers who are constantly working on games to take time out of their day to go instead work on assets for selling these games at these shows instead. But what that means is Sony does have a lot of stuff that it's been waiting to announce. And do they wait until the normal showcase timing in early fall again, or the fall time frame, or do they say, hey, I guess maybe since we weren't ready for last fall, we don't have to wait an entire year. Maybe we could line something up for E3. So I think it's possible they could have something during that time. I don't think that they will be part of E3 proper, but they could just have something in that same time frame. Again, though, could spread out over a course of a month, and that would once again be pretty messy.
Yeah, I'm thinking now, though, like what we're expecting from Sony and PlayStation for this year. And I feel like PSVR 2 is something that they're going to want to push heavily.
Yes,
so maybe
first month on, definitely.
Yeah, so maybe they will show up at a Summer Game Fest or E3, especially considering that it's ReedPop in charge of E3 this year as opposed to previous years. So maybe there is a much more positive relationship there, that they would want to have like physical booths to show off PSVR 2, especially because like this will be open to the public.
That's a good question. Has Sony had booths at PAX and other ReedPop events like Comic-Con? I have zero idea. I'd have to like go back and look. But that might be something like worth checking to see what the relationship has been with ReedPop. Yes,
sometimes.
Yes, at PAX.
Thank you, Marino.
Thank you, Marino. Yeah,
PAX expert.
Yes. So yeah, you're right. That like changes a lot of things, I think. But I don't know if it necessarily changes enough that Sony's like going to completely reverse course and be like, now we fully embrace E3. We've already sort of broken away, and maybe we see value in continuing to do things on our own. Again, we're Sony, we can do things on our own, and they have gotten just as much attention. So, still, I would prefer everyone come together for E3, but
please,
we'll see.
I don't want to be in LA for a month.
Damn right. All right. Let's keep moving along here. Xbox now acknowledges the journey, quote unquote, the journey it's been on to revive GoldenEye 007. This comes from Liam Doolin at Nintendo Life. Rare's legendary N64 shooter GoldenEye 007 is actually coming to Nintendo Switch this week after ongoing request. It's finally making a comeback on Switch Online expansion pack services this Friday. It's also coming to Xbox Game Pass. Although we'll never truly know just how difficult it has been to revive this classic first-person shooter, not long after the release date was locked in yesterday, Xbox's head Phil Spencer took a moment to acknowledge the journey Microsoft's gaming division has been on to make it happen. Here's a tweet from Phil. The journey to get GoldenEye 007 out on Xbox has been a long one. Great to finally get to bring it to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass. This rare limited classic is also coming out on Nintendo Switch. However you decide to play, this classic is worth playing. This is clearly a reference to them trying to make this happen for a very long time. Having sort of Nintendo step on the last opportunity at the very last minute and squash that out. Now here they are finally making it happen somewhat. Although part of that journey was it's not the HD version that they actually finished years and years ago coming out. Instead, it is this just ROM hitting Xbox Live or whatever it's called. I really want to hear that story, Jan, of how this actually came about, because this has got to be fascinating, right? Like Xbox, Nintendo working together.
Yeah, I want to see. I feel like we'll never see it. Because, Nintendo's involved and just how guarded Nintendo is about a lot of stuff. But I'm really interested to see what other, relationships or projects this could eventually spin off to, or was proposed in the process of bringing GoldenEye across the board. This also just reminds me, like, damn, a lot of people really, really like James Bond. And I'm kind of like not in this sphere or this circle of like, because I didn't have an N64 growing up, so I didn't play GoldenEye. And also I just hate James Bond. Yeah.
I was going to ask, do you have a super agent that you do like?
Cody Banks.
Of course.
Frankie Muniz.
Yeah, of course. Why'd I even ask? I should have known. I'm an Ethan Hunt guy. I like Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I don't know.
Austin Powers, says Medusa Lover 69.
I think I'm with you on Mission Impossible. I'm with you there.
I got super into it because we in the same way that James Bond became super popular as Britain was a failing superpower. Now we're a failing superpower, and it feels real nice to watch a movie where it's like, oh, this guy's got things under control. That's nice. That's nice. This makes me feel more secure. It's make believe, but I'm choosing to believe it.
Ghost Protocol, when what's his face like cocked his arms before he started punching, amazing.
Yes. Amazing, yes. And like I said, I think I said this before last time we talked about it, the best movie of the year so far is just that little clip of Tom Cruise jumping off the ramp and immediately skydiving. Boy, I'll watch that over and over and over again.
I hate him so much as a person, though.
Yeah. And he's gotten so smart about never, ever acknowledging that he's a person ever again. He never talks about himself as a person. He is just a icon that tries to hurt himself for our entertainment. And as long as he keeps it on that vibe, I'm okay. If we start talking about the personality again, though, no thank you. All right. Nintendo has patented improved image processing method, possibly for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This comes from My Nintendo News. It would appear as though Nintendo has been looking at numerous different ways to improve the Switch's image quality as the system continues to age. The Nintendo Switch internal hardware has basically remained unchanged since the system launched back in March 2017, but a patent filed by the company in June 2022 seems to go some way to help improve the system's image quality. The patent could be related to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, since one of the inventors for it is Akashi Miyagi, who has previously worked as a sub-director with Kentaro Tamingyan on The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Yeah, you want to try to say that one?
I'm cool.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah. Twilight Princess, and he has thought of play a role in the upcoming The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The patent is for an image processing method for expressing objects with transparency with a low processing load. And that sounds like a very specific thing, but I do wonder if maybe that's a big major element in Tears of the Kingdom, and it's something like, hey, we can use this and make things run a lot smoother. I think that we are at a point where they have worked with the Switch for so long, and Tears of the Kingdom is so big that they probably have spent so much time on optimization that they have developed new methods that are going to make this game somewhat more performant than we would have expected. Where are you at with like how this game is going to run? Because I have high hopes that it's going to be fine.
I have high hopes as well. I feel like Nintendo knows how to use their tools the best. You know, it's like when you approach an old craftsman or tradesman and like, that's a rusty wrench, dog. That's not going to do anything. And then instead of using it as a wrench, he uses it as a hammer, and it's more effective. And so I feel like I trust Nintendo to push the Switch to its limits, because I feel like they know the twists and turns of it more so than other devs. And yeah, I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised by Breath of the Wild. I'm hoping
especially after updates. Breath of the Wild got decent after updates for sure.
Oh yeah. And just looking at Fire Emblem Engage, and I know that like that's not a first party studio, is it? I forget.
Intelligent Systems is not owned by Nintendo, but they are a very long term close partner and probably know the Switch pretty well.
Yeah. That looks great. That looks amazing. So like the internal team, I feel like can make it just absolutely shine. That being said, I'm interested in seeing how it will run on other
methods.
Yeah,
absolutely. That 4090 Ti Switch. People point Breath of the Wild ran 30. It did have some issues at launch. It got better over time, but that game was never made with the Switch in mind. It was always in development for the Wii U, and I think building Tears of the Kingdom from the ground up for the Switch, being able to come up with new methods to render it, sort of setting the limitations with those things in mind. I think there's hopes here that it's going to be a solid 30. It's not going to, obviously, I don't think it's going to be a 60 frames per second game, but a solid 30 is what I'm expecting. So we'll see. Could always come out and disappoint, but I don't know. Most of the time, Nintendo, you're right, does get there. There are Zelda games that don't run great. That the Link's Awakening remake has a lot of loading issues, but again, that was an external studio, Grezzo, who clearly was struggling with Unreal Engine in a way that they weren't expecting and never could fix it. So that game still has those same issues. The FTC sued Microsoft to stop the EU accepting a settlement over Activision Deal, it's claimed. This comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. And what the story is basically giving us reasoning why the FTC seemed to act so abruptly in suing to stop this deal when many people, including myself, were expecting them to take quite some time if they were going to go this route. And really a lot of people weren't expecting them to go this route at all. This gives a reasoning why they did it. The Federal Trade Commission filed a lawsuit attempting to block Microsoft from acquiring Activision Blizzard in an attempt to dissuade EU regulators from accepting a settlement allowing the deal, it's been claimed. Bloomberg reports that, according to people familiar with the investigations, U.S. regulator, the FTC, filed a complaint quicker than expected because it wanted to preempt its European counterparts who were preparing to negotiate a potential compromise with Microsoft. According to the report, the FTC filed its complaint just hours after U.S. and EU officials held a call about their separate inquiries, during which the EU said they plan to start discussions with Microsoft about a settlement. This reportedly led to the FTC filing the suit on the same day, even though it wasn't due to consider settlement proposals until later in the investigation process. Those close to the transaction told Bloomberg that the FTC wasn't expected to act until spring, and that usually in these situations it would wait until closer to a deadline to try to figure out settlement terms that would be considered globally acceptable. Now, all that said, Jan, the FTC is clearly, this is what they want to do this because I think philosophically don't think that this deal is a good idea and they want to get in the way. So they are well within their rights to try every method that is available to them to get in the way. But I think this does add some method to the madness that it felt like looking at it externally, where it's like, this is a bad case for you. It seems like you're throwing in there and you're going to lose. Now, of course, you can appeal it later, but you're probably going to lose this. And it's, this was always a stalling tactic. And in that way, it's like, it seems like it's worked because the EU has clearly sort of slowed up since then. And they're like, well, if the FTC is not going to prove it, we can't find a globally acceptable compromise immediately. So we're going to have to wait anyhow. And so it is still working, but I think now it feels more understandable about why this is happening in the first place, right?
Yeah, I think I'm just continually entertained that more wrenches get thrown into the gears of this deal. Like when it really first got announced, and any deal. And I think it's interesting. Like, the FTC's doing something. Wow, look at you guys. You guys blew the dust off and decided, you know what? This year, New Year's resolution, we're gonna do stuff.
Yeah. Now they the stuff they usually do is like when they have a more certain case in front of them. So that's why I was always super surprised in here. But it's like, okay, no, they are getting creative with their ways of enforcing their philosophical beliefs. Now, this stuff's usually outside of their mandate as given to them by Congress. But it's like, they're like, well, we're still allowed to try other things if we believe something is maybe not a good idea. Especially if we can maybe then force better terms on a compromise later. But it's like, no, the FTC hasn't had any interest in compromising. And it seems like, well, they are, again, playing this clock game and trying to run things out. And once again, that is something available to them. Let's see. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask, like, if the FTC is actually successful or, like, they make a big enough stink about this, like, do you think this winds up affecting, I mean, it totally would, affecting, like, further acquisitions, like, down the line? Like, does this make a studio like Square or Ubisoft reconsider their positions of, like, oh, crap, like, well, we can't get bought by a bigger company now. We got to just do our work now.
Yes, I think that's part of the point. It is definitely them saying, while our mandate is to stop monopolies and antitrust, even in cases where we wouldn't necessarily be able to prove, with a certainty that this would result in a monopoly or in certain antitrust situations, we are going to use all the methods available to us to act even beyond that mandate. And we want everyone to be aware of that. And I think that's why they felt they had to do it here, because this is the big one, and this is the one that would get the most attention. And now everyone knows FTC very serious about this stuff. And if you are going to try to make this happen, it's not going to be a cakewalk. It is going to be an arduous process. And that arduous process amplifies the amount of time and money these companies calculate into making these things happen. And obviously all that amplifies the risk that they have to consider. And any risk is something that they are going to be like, well, maybe we don't actually try this deal in the first place. I think this is definitely them trying to the FTC trying to slow down the acquisitions so that the power does not consolidate under a handful of companies. Although, again, with this, it's going to be like IP power, and the gaming industry is still so dynamic that it's like nothing like this is going to approach a monopoly anytime soon. Mm-hmm. All right. Xbox still expects Activision Blizzard deal to go through by July, however. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. During Microsoft's most recent financial earnings call, the company still plans to have its Activision Blizzard deal secured and completed by July 2023. This is a confident statement from Microsoft, which has had multiple lawsuits and claims filed against the buyout of the Call of Duty publisher. A lot of the conversation revolves around Microsoft having too much of a monopoly on gaming, and Sony has backed the FTC's lawsuit against the deal. However, from this earnings call, it seems Microsoft believes that it will win these cases and complete the deal, something that was initially announced early in 2022. Stay tuned as we provide more, blah, blah, blah. Keep reading. This is still probably what they have to keep saying, right? Especially to investors. If things were changed in any super major way in terms of what they expect to happen, maybe they would have to communicate that. But as far as they're concerned, we expected this to happen, so we still expected the deal to go through, as we said before. As we get closer to that June date, though, do you think that they they begin moving out the timeline, or do they begin saying maybe the deal is less and less likely? Do you think they have like one fork in the road and they're trying to decide which way to go down?
I think they're just going to keep pushing this off for as long as they possibly can, not only to avoid angering any stockholders or investors, but also just to avoid having to pay whatever fees that they may have to pay to Activision. I also didn't consider this deal affecting the Microsoft's E3 presence at all, because then it's like, are you planning to include Activision Blizzard, or is Activision Blizzard still acting independently for their E3 planning? So yeah, this just makes the pot of gumbo exponentially more complicado.
Yep, I would imagine that they are probably still operating independently for that. But if it does close in time for E3, maybe they leave a spot open in their video to be like, and here's our new partners over at Activision, and then you get like a Zoom video of them waving, sort of like that.
Yeah, that is such an easy thing to slot in at the end of like Phil going like, oh, and then welcome to our new family.
Yep.
And then it's just like Call of Duty. What else is Blizzard Activision? Overwatch people. Tracer going, hello, mate. Pew, 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 pew. And then, like, people just waving in a Zoom window.
Absolutely, yes, that's exactly what will happen. And then they might say, and if the deal is closed by then that'll be where they announce, and here are the games available on Game Pass right now. Like that seems all possible, but we'll see.
And then you hear the Candy Crush King just laughing as like. Yes. As the trailer fades to black.
Yes, Phil Spencer and the Candy Crush King and the sauna together just counting money. Yeah, I think that'll be how it goes. Axel in chat says, has there been any update on the gamer lawsuit? And for context, this is the lawsuit where gamers are suing Microsoft to stop the deal because they're like, we have the right under the FTC laws to say we are afraid of a monopoly when this is happening. Yes, Microsoft tried to get it thrown out, and the judge said no. So that lawsuit so far is still going forward. So we'll see if there's any more happening there eventually.
The gamers.
See if the gamers can take back the hierarchy of power. All right. EA confirms Dead Space has a secret ending and new game plus. This comes from Tom Ivan at VGC. Electronic Arts has confirmed that its upcoming Dead Space remake has a secret ending and includes a new game plus mode. The official Dead Space Twitter account said new game plus will be available at launch and include a level 6 advanced suit, new Phantom variant necromorphs, and a secret ending. The inclusion of an alternative ending was recently revealed when the game's trophy list was published by Exophase. The title of the trophy in question could be considered a spoiler, so instead, just the description reads, see the alternative ending on any difficulty mode. The original Dead Space only had one ending, so the trophy essentially confirmed that the remake has at least some extra story content not previously seen. And I think, Jan, have you played much Dead Space? Like you said, you played a little bit, right?
Yep.
So I think kind of like the vibe I got early on was this is still going to be mostly Dead Space, but there are changes, and it seemed like those changes would sort of multiply as you got further and further down the line, and they would be setting things up in slightly different ways than they did before. So it's like this is going to be a kind of new experience even for Dead Space fans, and this stuff sort of confirms that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I wonder if this new game plus winds up setting up possible 2 and 3 remakes down the line, or if it's more so like, hey, we acknowledge that 3 was weird, guys, so we may just put 2 out and then call it a day.
Yes. I think that they want to, they definitely want to continue doing Dead Space in the future, and if you want to do that, you got to like really set the foundation here and make sure that it's a strong foundation. And that means making changes where necessary and setting up new possibilities. Real quick, the reviews did pop off. Like you said earlier, our quick look is live. It's on the site. Go check that out. And it's doing pretty well. It's got an 89 on Metacritic, which I think is very strong. Anything that's like right outside that 90 is almost always very strong. It's that's based on 47 reviews. 46 are positive. 1 is mixed. Lots of 100s here. Let's see. VG247 says Dead Space doesn't just place you into the role of Isaac Clarke. It forces you into his head, too. You're constantly questioning if the apparitions he has seen are real, and his physical reaction to the unbelievable events aboard the spaceship only fuels this further. You are completely at the whim of the USG Ishimura, and it never lets you forget that. Ultimately, Dead Space is a game that a lot of horror developers can learn from when it comes to creating suspense and feeling a dread in its players. And as far as remakes go, Dead Space has me thoroughly pining over a decade-old series. That's a success, if you ask me. I think that one of those lines there about this game being very good at creating tension is something like where Callisto Protocol really missed the mark for a lot of people, I think, where it looks recognizable, but the feelings, the terror that you're supposed to be feeling as you play the game was just off. It just wasn't really there. And this game nailing that is going to only, I think, strike that contrast even further, right?
Yeah, I think what also helps is the fact that there are like slight adjustments that they've made to this remake could throw some people off, where you're expecting it to go one way.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, we're going to go that way. But then you're going to fall for a second. I'm not actually hinting at anything that happens, but like it's playing with my own memory, which I guess is also in turn playing with my own perception of the game, which is neat.
Yes, that is. It's probably the right choice for this kind of a remake as well. To keep things, keep you on your toes, which is what I think is just part of this genre and part of Dead Space's legacy. Destructoid gave it an 85. It feels great to just dive back into the USG Ishimura. Dead Space as a concept still holds up, and the reworking of EA Motive has provided highlights, provides highlights. It does highlight its best features while shoring up old pitfalls. Sci-fi survival horror fans should get what they want out of this: the return of a classic with gorgeous graphics and some new twists, but the same old boot-stomping good time. It sounds like it's doing very well in terms of getting those reviews. Definitely feels like the right one of the right franchises for EA to bring back, and I imagine this game's going to do very well throughout the entire year. So, keep an eye on that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Moving ahead, Game Freak believes it's important to work on projects besides Pokemon. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. In a recent interview, Game Freak's Masafumi Soto spoke about how it was beneficial for the studio to take on other projects besides the Pokemon games, and that it can be both motivate developers and help them grow. And this is similar to a story we did recently about how they said that, we do this because it teaches like a new generation of developers how to work on our games. But this is like a more recent update of that, and they said this is basically going to keep happening. It is very important to Game Freak to keep taking on the challenge of creating original games, Soto said to VGC. I think that creating a game from scratch, putting it out there, and getting a good reception is a great motivator for creators, and is also very significant in terms of its meaning for the growth of the company. With that said, we do not think in terms of limiting original games to small-scale projects. It's been 10 years, and this is no longer the quote, it's been 10 years since Game Freak first established its department for original games. While work continues on the Pokemon franchise, there have been multiple interesting releases since the founding of this department. Some of those include Timbo the Badass Elephant, Giga Wrecker, and the studio's most recent non-Pokemon release, Little Town Hero. Although now the most recent one would be that updated Pocket Card Jockey. Yes, which people seem to love. I have an iPad laying around somewhere. I'm going to go get it out. I'm going to play that. I don't want to wait for it to come somewhere else. I really want to get into it, so I'm going to go check that out. But this, honestly, their track record of non-Pokemon games is pretty strong. What do you think that is? It's just like they don't have the pressure and like that crunched timeline to get stuff out once a year that really enables them to make sure that the other games are as good as possible.
I feel like I have a very skewed relationship with Game Freak when it comes to Pokemon games. I tried Little Town Hero and thought it was, as the children say or used to say, mid at best.
Yeah, that one, I've heard that about Little Town Hero, yes.
But, folks seem to dig their other releases. Like, a lot of people are very excited about Pocket Card Jockey.
Yes.
So, maybe it's like, it's like back at school when you're like really working hard and stuck on a project, you get writer's block and you can only do subpar work because you're so tired of seeing the same work over and over and over again. So maybe it feeds into that whole idea that like, you know what, we need to work on other stuff because absence makes the heart grow fonder. And the further time we spend away from Pokemon, the more we'll actually think about making a good game when it comes to Pokemon.
Yeah. Always leave that possibility of a good Pokemon game on the table. Tease the fans with that.
These motherfuckers.
Drill Dozer's still a banger, everybody. So go play Drill Dozer. DualSense Edge has a smaller battery than the standard DualSense, teardown reveals. Sony's new $200 DualSense Edge controller has a smaller battery than the standard DualSense, a teardown video has suggested. I think the story comes from VGC and Chris Scullion, I think. The premium controller, which features additional buttons and customization options over its predecessor, was released on Thursday via Sony's PlayStation Direct store. Sony Interactive Entertainment had previously admitted that the Pro Controller would have a moderately shorter operating time compared to the standard DualSense, which it said it was because it had to put more features within the same form factor and ergonomic design as the original pad. We wanted to strike a good balance between wireless operating time and delivering robust, high-performance features, it said. Now that the DualSense Edge is in consumers' hands, however, a teardown video by Australian electronics firm Buds Controllers has revealed that the premium controller has a smaller capacity battery than the original DualSense. The Edge includes a 1050 milliamp hour battery, I think that's how you say that, compared to the DualSense's original DualSense's 1560 milliamp hour battery, which itself was an increase on the PS4 DualShock's 1000 milliamp hour battery. This is pretty wild to me, Jan, that the $200 controller's battery is so small. I get that the answer to that is just buy a dock, always keep it on the dock, so that when you are playing it for these 4 or 5 hour sessions, it's always ready to go. But I mean, maybe it should come with a dock if this is how it's going to be. That's too small, especially since the DualSense already has such a short battery life.
Yeah, I wind up using my DualSense when I'm playing games on the PC, but I'll have it hardwired in, so I don't notice the battery life as much.
Probably, yeah.
But then I'll pop it on and use it for the PS5 like I should, and then I'll be shocked at how fast the battery dies. Paying $200, I think you're right. I think we should get a little bit more battery life, or just a straight up dock for this. Cattypuss in the Giant Bomb chat is right. I'm dual shocked.
We're all dual shocked by these shocking developments. Yeah, I think that this is worth criticizing, worth calling out. It's not the end of the world. This is something that you can plug in, and if you're serious enough to buy a $200 controller, maybe you're so serious that you are plugging in and get the best latency or something. But still, a lot of people are going to use this wirelessly, and it's me paying $200. You should probably get more. It should feel premium in every aspect, including its battery life. But oh well. All right, finally here, Naughty Dog is done with Uncharted and might not make The Last of Us 3, Neil Druckmann says. This comes from Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. Given the big success of The Last of Us video game series and the new HBO show, fans might be expecting Naughty Dog to make The Last of Us Part 3 in the future. That could happen. A plot outline has already been formulated, but Naughty Dog hasn't made any decisions just yet. The next The Last of Us game in the upcoming multiplayer is the upcoming multiplayer title, which Naughty Dog says is its most ambitious title ever. Speaking to BuzzFeed, Naughty Dog co-president Neil Druckmann said he considers the multiplayer game to be another chapter in the universe of The Last of Us. But what about a sequel to The Last of Us Part 2? Druckmann said people are wondering about The Last of Us Part 3 and whether that will be a thing or not. Druckmann didn't have anything to announce, but said Naughty Dog gets to decide what games it makes. And just because The Last of Us is a successful franchise, that doesn't mean it will keep making more The Last of Us games. After all, Naughty Dog has said it is done with the Uncharted series despite the franchise's massive commercial success. Here's a quote. All I can say is, at Naughty Dog, we're very, very privileged that our publisher is Sony, which means Sony funds our games and supports us, and we're owned by Sony. They have supported us every step of the way to follow our passions, meaning that just because something is successful, people think there's all this pressure and we have to make a sequel. That's not the case. For us, Uncharted was insanely successful. Uncharted 4 was one of our best-selling games, and we're able to put our final brushstroke on that story and say that we're done, we're moving on. Similarly, Naughty Dog could walk away from the Last of Us franchise and pursue other projects, like potentially its rumored new IP, but Naughty Dog would make another mainline Last of Us game if it had a compelling enough story behind it, Druckmann said. I personally think it's pretty wild that they're not going to make another Uncharted at Naughty Dog. I suppose maybe I'm less familiar with the inner workings of Naughty Dog, and a lot of people who are big fans of it say, no, that makes sense. It seems like they're done with it. Okay, that's fine. And the other side of this is that this doesn't mean there will never be another Uncharted game. It will probably just move to a different developer. Mm-hmm. Still, though, I mean, maybe this is just me being like, well, I liked Uncharted 4 a lot, and I don't have much interest in more of The Last of Us, so I mean, make more Uncharted for me. I'm over here going, I would like that. I would play that, and I think it would do very well. But if they don't have the interest, I guess they shouldn't force themselves to do it. Still, though, this seems strange to me. I don't know. What do you think?
I think I'm on the other side where I feel like not that I feel like I'm done with Uncharted, but I feel like I've gotten everything out of the series that I would need.
That's what I hear from a lot of people. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And personally, maybe what I see is that Neil Druckmann or like the Naughty Dog folks or this whole studio, maybe they've pushed Uncharted to its limits with the stories that they can tell with it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can only do so many thievery stories and like hit Nathan Drake coming to terms with like, oh, maybe I shouldn't steal, or no, I'm gonna keep stealing. I love you, I don't love you. Versus like, you know, the themes that they can explore in The Last of Us. Them thinking like them saying, or Neil Druckmann saying, that they may not even make a Last of Us 3 seems absolutely wild. Then again, I just don't know what they do for a third game to wrap up the series.
I think what he's saying with The Last of Us Part 3 is, we don't have to make one. We're going to, but we don't have to. No one's saying we have to make it. That's what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm ultimately excited about like after, and this is going to be years from now, but after The Last of Us 3 comes out, I'm interested to see what Naughty Dog would do next.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they'll go back to Jak and Daxter.
It's time.
Environmental storytelling with Jak and Daxter.
Yes.
Daxter, no more quips.
That's right. No more quips. Environmental emergent storytelling. Let's go. Let's make it happen. All right. Let's get to the polls here. I got them ready to go. I swear. There we go. On one of these days this week, I think yesterday I asked, are you excited about GoldenEye on Switch and or Xbox? 50.4% said yes. 49.6% said no. Jan, you never had a N64, you said, when you were a kid, so you are not excited about GoldenEye, right? Like, even going back to see it, or you're just kind of like, oh, I'm curious, but not really excited. How are you feeling about it?
I'm happy for the homies that have been wanting it.
Damn, you know, sorry about your childhood, Jan.
Yeah, you know, I know that Dan really enjoys GoldenEye, and I'm happy for Dan. When Dan is happy, I'm happy.
Well, I was a big GoldenEye fan. I know what that game is, though. It's like I will play it for a day or two, and that's
right.
That's fine. It'll be a good nostalgic trip. That's good.
Yeah, just for folks that okay, all right. Okay, Dan. Yes, I don't know about the full robust N64 library either. Let's call it robust.
Yeah, that's a word.
But yeah, I'm glad that folks can check it out for the day and then bounce off. Chameleon Twist? What is Chameleon Twist?
Oh, you gotta play Chameleon Twist. You gotta play Chameleon Twist 2.
There's a 2?
I think so. I can't remember if it ever came out.
Who is this perv? Is this Gex?
That's like, yeah, it's Gex's cousin. Yeah,
Gex's
hell yeah, there's
cousin.
a 2. Chameleon Twist is definitely a rental game. I rented that. Okay, there it is. Marino's got you with the wiki. Jan, I put up a new poll. In the meantime, why don't you tell people what's happening on GiantBomb.com?
Oh boy, immediately after this, if you're watching live, we've got another installment of Grubb Z3D. The Blight Club continues to blight on. Blight no. Pargon. No. But later today, we also got an episode of the Voicemail Dump Truck. Tomorrow, another episode of Game S Mornings, and you and I, during Unprofessional Fridays, will be playing Hitman Freelancer mode against each other. How the rules will work,
we'll make them up as
yet
we go
to decide.
Along. Yeah,
exactly. But tonight, Grubb, guys, please, we have the win bag returning to GiantBomb.com with another installment of Friday Night Forking Season 2. It's Season Thaw right now, you know?
It's the season of the thaw.
It's Season of the Thaw. Oh, my God.
I've heard he's been planning some stuff. I would not miss this if I were you, everybody.
He has been planning stuff. Dan and I may have put together a manifesto for him to learn about things. So there may be more Giant Bomb elements into Friday Night Forking. I don't want to say more than that. I also don't.
I just wouldn't miss it. I just would not miss it.
I would not miss it. I have reservations for a dinner for my partner and I later. I might miss that instead.
You just like ask the TV at the restaurant. If they don't have one, you go buy them one and you hook it up and you set it up and you say, "Can we turn this on while we're at our nice dinner?"
Can you please put it at full volume?
Full volume, yes. Yes, and it doesn't have to be right next to me. Everyone should hear. Everyone should be able to see.
Yeah.
All right. The poll for tomorrow. Do you want Naughty Dog to make a new Uncharted? And I mean, I would have. I just don't have my finger on the pulse of this one. Because I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody? No, it seems like most people are like ready to move on.
I guess like, yeah, they're with me. Grubb, they're with me now.
They're with you now. Damn.
I kind of look at the Uncharted movie as just like the barometer there, where it's like it did okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tom Holland is like I like him a lot. He's great as Spider-Man. I feel like because of the facial and name recognition, folks would have checked it out. But I think Uncharted as a whole is just like, oh, okay, cool. I've seen those games.
Yeah. When you bring up the movie, maybe that does put it into more context for me. It's not popping off like The Last of Us is. It didn't. It was maybe the complete opposite. So like very forgettable. So maybe that's a sign. It's probably a sign. Jan, thank you so much for talking with me today about video games. It means a lot to me.
It means a lot to me that you have me here on Thursday mornings.
Everybody, thank you for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and we'll leave the blight on for you. Bye, everybody.